addiction is it's an unfortunate result of an effort to try to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really a quest. Like people who become addicts will, when they get sober or they find recovery later on, they might reflect, wow, now that I have recovery, now that I have yoga in my life, now that I know how to center myself and to actually touch upon the truth of who and what I am. Now I realize this is what I was always seeking. That I was always seeking this feeling, but I was just seeking it in the wrong ways. I didn't know better. And those wrong ways become addictive in the mind and body and spirit. And then they can take our life, which is what's so dangerous here about addiction. They certainly can take our serenity long before they take our life. So it's a quest. This group of people, I'd say all human beings are on a quest, whether they realize it or not, whether they use that language or not, but we're all on our hero's journey. And we're all trying to find out the riddle of our life. And we're all trying to, figure out how should I plug into the world in a meaningful and engaged way. I think everybody's in that. And I think the quality of our the things that we choose to help us along that path obviously are going to influence the outcome, the experience, the direct experience that we have in this life. So, I recommend and highly advocate for processes, philosophies, and practices that engender and embody the truth and move us towards a greater awareness and consciousness of who and what we are. And of course, really, that's the definition of yoga, right? So yoga in the broadest term is that movement from, say, a disconnection to this place of union. And however that can happen, by the way, however that can happen is yoga. So it isn't necessarily on the mat, on a yoga mat doing physical postures, but it might be. And I highly advocate for that. It's joyful and it keeps this body in pretty good shape, energy moving, and the stuckness that can happen in the body emotionally and otherwise, that can be processed along. Wonderful thing. So I advocate for yoga so strongly, and meditation, and also breath work, and also diet. Looking at your diet, and these four things: yoga, meditation, breath work, and diet. If you can work on those areas of your life, really good things come to pass. Really good things come to pass, whoever you are. And also, of course, for me, 12 steps, the essence of what's in the 12 steps is something that's really valuable to help a person along. Anybody, any human being.
So tell me more about your journey when you, so you were part of the 12-step program. When did yoga come in? How did you discover yoga, and what role has that played in your journey?
I was fortunate to find and to start practicing yoga when I was in my first year of recovery. So I got sober in June of 1991, and shortly thereafter, I moved from New York to San Francisco, and I was walking down the street, and there was literally a neon sign, a huge sign that said yoga. And this was right as yoga was about to explode in the United States. So it's 91. There had been a mini explosion in the late 80s, where a lot of the teachers that became the most famous teachers in the Western world had trained in the late 80s, the Shiva Rays and the Sean Corns and the Brian Kess and Baron Baptiste and Max Strom and just a holy host of others that I can't remember right this moment. But they were all trained in the late 80s or maybe 1990. And yoga was about to just come into its own in the Western world through the 90s and then the 2000s, like epic growth all the way up until March 2020 and the beginning of the pandemic. So this unbelievable growth of yoga. And so I found this class in San Francisco. I went in there, I practiced. It was a 90-minute class. 5 minutes into the class, I thought I was going to die. I literally like a torrent of sweat coming off my brow as I'm in downward dog, literally everything shaking. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I'm not in good shape. I'm not in good shape. I just remember thinking, oh my God, looking over here, this girl over here, this guy over here, and just be like, see them like very comfortable, very at peace. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I get to that? How do I get to that? And the teacher came by and she patted me on my lower back. She said, someday this is going to be a rest pose for you. And I was like, well, not today. That's all I could say. And I somehow survived that 90-minute experience. And I laid there in Shavasana. And I felt at peace. Like, I felt a depth of peace that I had only ever found through severe drug abuse. Like, I had never, ever, ever felt this kind of peace, stillness, dropping in, the full weight of my body on the ground, in the yoga studio, on just a puddle of a huge ocean of sweat around me, and what had come out of me in terms of tension. I just can't express how important it was. And so I began a love affair with the practice of yoga. But I want to be clear, it was not an everyday thing for me for those first few years, because it was painful. I loved the effect, but it was very difficult for me. So there was sort of this, I had a lot of resistance to the practice. And the practice was extremely physical for me. And I hadn't yet realized some of the deeper possibilities of the practice. So I would say I approached my yoga very, in a very surface kind of way. I was interested in my body looking a certain kind of way. And I was interested in, being able to achieve a posture just to achieve the posture. And my orientation to it, I would say, was not exactly where it needed to be. But even with all those imperfections in my approach, yoga started to work on me in a very deep way. And I started to become capable of stillness. I started to be able to release the unbelievable tension and stress of my life that I had always carried. And that was my first year of recovery. So I'm working with a sponsor and going to 12-step meetings almost every day. I'm working the 12 steps, and I'm going to yoga maybe 3 days, 4 days a week. And that's how that sort of unfolded for me from the beginning. It was like the most incredible gift to have both of those things going on. And even to this day, like, sometimes if I'm traveling for a while or doing whatever, I'll miss a few days, maybe a week of practice, come back to the practice. And when I come back, I'm like, what blessing this is to know what to do, to know how to operate this frame, to know how to release tension, to know how to come back to center, to know how to quiet my mind. It's just, this is why I scream from the rooftops, from Recovery 2.0 rooftops, like, please, if you're in recovery, and that's everybody, please start practicing yoga, start practicing physical, also intellectual, understanding the concepts of yoga. It's very important. Also, service, be of service. Also, the breath and get a hold of what's possible here with the breath, and learn to sit still and meditate. And I just, I know that in our society still today, people think that's, generally still, I think people still think like, well, that's cool, or that's a good workout, but I think people generally still don't understand the full treasure that's here. And like me, they will meet their own resistance in their coming to the mat. They will meet like the mind saying, no, not today. We're too busy. I've got something else to do. I've got this to do. I'm stressed, or, oh God, I'm sad. I'm lonely. I'm anxious, whatever it is. Like, I don't want to get on the mat. I don't want to get on the mat. But the minute you do it, like the whole day shifts for sure. 100% of the time, 100% of the time. Has never not worked. You know what I mean? So I'm just screaming from the rooftops. If you're in recovery from addiction, you have got to pick this up. You've just got to experience it and bring it into your life as a daily practice, or just even a second-to-second practice of awareness.